back to A Well-Designed Business. My name is Luann Nigara, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company Window Works from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to A Well-Designed Business. Today, I have Kelly Fridline on the show with me. Kelly is an entrepreneur at heart, but a designer through and through. Since establishing her own interior design firm in 2017, she's learned the importance of flexibility in not only design, but business planning and goal setting. In the almost 5 years that she's been in business, her focus has changed from primarily interior design to virtual design assistance and renderings, and in training fellow creatives in the art of professionally presenting and documenting their projects, and ultimately, finally, assisting and mentoring fellow virtual assistants in business and attracting clients. Her background in architecture and her experiences with her business give Kelly unique insight on what it takes to be successful, to work on your own terms, and to stand strong in what you do. And before I introduce you to Kelly, I'm going to take a moment to thank our show sponsor, Kravet. Kravet's commitment to innovation and their ability to bring in new technology is always working to make your life easier as a designer. Their website makes finding quality furnishings easy, and the advanced color search allows you to create the exact custom color you are looking for and get filtered search results that best match your selection. Sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Well, visit Kravet.com today and see it for yourself. Once you open your trade account, be sure to use the coupon code AWDB10 for 10% off any one order of Kravet fabric, wallpaper, or trim. If you are an interior designer that has been using Kravet for years and you have yet to use this code, you can use it any one time for any one order of Kravet fabric, wallpaper, or trim. So please don't hesitate, okay? Now, let's meet Kelly. Hi, Kelly. Thanks so much for joining me on A Well-Designed Business today.
Hi, Luann. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, Kelly, I am happy to have you here, too. We've certainly been floating around each other's world for several years here. And I love all of the people that we know in common and all of the connections we have. And I'm looking forward to finally having the opportunity to get to know you. You are a interesting lady, Kelly. I will just tell you that. What I've learned about you is that you are trained as an architect rather than in a traditional interior design training. I've learned that you have 3 different businesses, one of them which is doing interior design facing to the consumer, but you also are very involved in mentoring and teaching your peers in the design industry all kinds of skills, chief architect and Dubsado and Case, or I don't even know what half these things are. But I guess what I'm learning is, at heart, it just seems that you are someone who likes to share knowledge and uplift people around them. I mean, that's like the thing that just keeps coming to my mind as I've been getting to know you. So tell me a little bit about this unusual career of yours. You know me, Kelly. You listen to the show. I don't usually ask people to tell me their backstory, but I think this might be well-deserved to hear a little bit.
I would love to tell you my backstory. So I hold a Master of Architecture from Savannah College of Art and Design. I graduated there in 2011. And that included 5 years of school prior. I actually took a year off in between. And then after that, I had actually started a program in and with NYU. It was the second year of the program, and it was in London, and it was to learn historic preservation.
Hmm.
And I was about 2 weeks in when I realized I was just kind of redoing the sophomore year of architecture school. So I left there and started working at a historic preservation firm in Philadelphia. I got to walk around the rooftop of Eastern State Penitentiary,
Hmm.
and um, I learned a lot of the technicalities of historic preservation in, unfortunately, the only 9 months that I worked there. The principal came down with cancer while I was there. But then
Hmm.
after that, I worked for a design firm in Saratoga Springs, New York. I've done a lot of moving in the last 12 years.
It sounds like
And
it.
and that's where I learned a lot. So anybody who's been to design school, I think whether it's interior design or architecture school or anything within, that realm, will tell you in most cases you learn how to design in school, but maybe you don't necessarily learn the technicality. So you're not learning formal drafting or the way things are really actually constructed. That's in many cases taught at a firm. And I was very lucky enough to work in a I wouldn't even call it a mid-sized firm. It's for a company called Finney Design Group, and they were, and I'm sure they still are, they were the architects of record for NYRA, so I got to do projects for the Saratoga race course. I got to work on projects for the Adirondack parks.
Hmm.
And then I got to work on multi-million dollar homes. So, and lake houses up, in Lake George
Hmm.
and that area. So I had I had a lot of experience working there, and while I was there, I met an Army officer online, right? Because everything nowadays, including my life, is all virtual. And he was deployed, but we got to know each other. Again, I feel like this is half of my life on a professional level too. And eventually we hit it off. We liked each other enough to marry eventually, and I have since moved to Oklahoma. I lived in Belton, Texas for 3 years, where I worked for a design build firm, which kind of re-taught me how to think about the building industry. Because going from a very well-oiled machine that was very formal architecture firm to a design build company where the two owners had no formal education at all
Hmm.
in the building arts. It was hey, this is what you do, and then this is what people don't actually look at, right? So, and then because it was a design build, I actually got to be on site significantly more than a traditional um, architectural intern, somebody who was still earning their hours at the time, right?
Hmm.
So, which hands-on is so important. And when I talk to interior designers or anybody who's just starting out, it's, hey, be humble, ask your trades. You don't need to go in there with your fists blazing,
Hmm.
ask questions. And I think because of that and all this moving and adjusting, we're now in Detroit, right? So, um, I've really learned throughout all of these processes and experiences in my life that humility is key, but so is being really proud of what your gifts are.
Hmm.
So in 2017, I actually separated from the design build. I was still in Texas. They let me take one project with me, which was a 20,000 square foot restaurant. And it was just enough where I could make some moves without having to get it signed off. Because again, I'm not licensed, so I'm not a formal architect.
Hmm.
Um, so in most states, especially if it's commercial, you have to get things signed off by an architect. But that project really kind of paid those ground fees, like in the sense of I was able to pay myself just enough where my husband was like, you can keep going with this, I guess, right? And, and then I just happened to I had signed up with Ivy. It was like one of those Instagram things. I was like, this is kind of cool. Yeah, I want to do interior design. I really like doing this. I had these big dreams of eventually being a boutique design firm that
Mm.
took it from the ground up all the way down to eventually reaching out to you and ordering curtains, right? So, um, and I signed up for a webinar with Nancy Ganzikoffer, and she did an amazing job. This was, I think, December of 2017 or January 2018, and to the point where I signed up for her initial discovery call. And within 50 minutes, I was crying because I had a kind of a come to Jesus moment during my discussion with her.
Nancy
And
can do that to you. I'm just going to say.
she's and it was that sort of thing too, because like I had also been in the architecture industry where it's like you don't cry, right? And I'm sitting here like bawling. Um, and she did her perfect sales pitch. And she's like, so if you hire me, I will teach you how to raise your rates and you'll be able to pay for my fees within 2 months. And I was like, my husband's gonna kill me if I hire you right now. And but I did it. And I'll be honest, it was one of the best decisions I have
Mm,
ever made. And especially for my business as a business owner. Um, and it was that kind of, I'm going to put my faith in the fact that I'm just going to go with it. And I was, she had talked me into raising my rate just enough. I wasn't anywhere near what I should have been charging still. And she helped me niche down. So when I started working with her, again, I was like, I'm going to be a boutique designer and I'm going to do everything. And she was like, don't do that. That's
mm,
not what, that's not what your background tells you to do. And I loved interior design. And to the point where I probably would have double majored in it in architecture school. But
mm,
I did have that mentality in school where it was like, well, I could also save myself the time and just go to architecture school and then deviate and go
mm,
into interior design with architectural training, right?
mhm, mhm,
Um, and so she helped me focus. She realized that I had been trained or kind of self-taught in many cases a software called Chief Architect. And she talked me into starting one-on-one training for interior designers. And I remember, I think that first year, I didn't get a whole lot of interaction. And it's actually that first year that's taught me patience, right? So when
mm,
it comes to that, like, hurry up and you gotta do it now mentality,
mhm,
I think all of my experiences have also taught me I would rather be the tortoise than the hare. So it might not be an immediate thing, right? So I've been wanting to, as we talked before we got on here, I've been meaning to reach out to you for like 3 or 4 years, and it took me 6 months ago. But at the same time, every time I would get to that point, I'm like, it's not the right time. Like
mm,
I'm not quite ready. There's has to be something that, in my mind, not necessarily broke me apart, but made it so that I felt more comfortable to having a conversation with you, right?
mm, mhm,
So, um, since then, so that was in 2018, 2019, I had significantly more training that took place. A lot of the training would actually turn into design consulting for interior designers. So they would, purchase 90 minutes with me, and some of it would be, hey, here's a kitchen and I'm really stumped at this layout. Can you help me? Right.
mm,
And um and some of it would just be full on technicalities and of how to use the software, right? And when COVID happened, I was so thankful that I had put this training in place, because I was not only going through what everybody else in the world was going through with COVID, but I was also postpartum.
mm,
Um, and because I had built my business over those 2 years based off of virtual design, I was also associated with other people that are now considered experts within the um, virtual and e-design realm at the time. So I was getting a lot of um, feedback from that as well. And the pressure of being postpartum, which as I told you, I'm not afraid to say that I was diagnosed with postpartum depression and rage, and then you're running a business,
Mm.
and Zoloft became my savings grace. So
Mm.
did therapy. So
Yep.
if you are a mom and you're going through that, there's no taboos. Break those bounds and do it for yourself.
Yep.
It's so worth it. But um, the training was my savings grace because it gave me the ability to say, I'm not doing hourly projects, but if you need assistance, buy a training bundle with me and I will jump on calls with you and we will work through your project together and you'll also learn the software. Um, by the end of 2020, I was feeling a lot more comfortable. I obviously was on medication too, so that helped. Um, uh, but I had then brought on a big team member. Her name is Jackie Bayuk, and she is my online business manager. And she really helped me streamline a lot of processes. I think it was also she was trying to break into the industry. We're army wives in the sense of she was my battle buddy when my husband was in the army. So
Mm.
so many times like don't work with your friends or your families. She's one of those friends who holds me accountable.
Mm.
So I was like, this is a little different. This is not a tiptoe around each other kind of relationship.
Right.
So I wasn't too worried about that, and she was exactly what I needed. And since then, last year I was able to launch my two spin-off companies outside of Kelly Fridline Design, which is the virtual design mentor and Liaise, and they are both based off of your your words in your first book, which I remember reading on South Beach on vacation, which was um, if you're going to do anything, make sure that it adds and elaborates on top of your business. Don't do anything that deviates from your original goals, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but
If you're not pivoting altogether, if you're adding adding services, or we talk about our Nancy G ladder of services, and is it aligned to your mission and your vision? Are you know what I'm
right.
like that's what
Yep.
you're saying? Is it staying in your lane? And by the way, otherwise it's a total pivot, which is legit also, right? But don't kid yourself on things. That's what I find, that people will chase a shiny object and kid themselves that it's in alignment with the original business. And that makes it tough when you're waking up every day. It's like serving two masters, and that is really not serving either one, right?
Exactly. Well, and I feel like even then, right, I had a focus, but when you start making money on your business, it's like, oh, well, let me try doing this, you know? And those, I feel like it doesn't matter how many podcasts you read or how amazing your business coach is. There is still that learning experience where you're going to make some really stupid decisions and you're going to learn from them,
Sure.
right? And for me,
Sure.
some of it was financial decisions that I made last year and investments. But again, that was a learning experience, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
um, but what I've loved is over the last year, even more so than anything else, that niche that Nancy helped me start to build has become more and more defined in the sense of
Mm-hmm.
it's not so defined that I can't deviate out of it if I want to, but it's enough where I feel comfortable mentoring people that much more because they're coming to me for very specific purposes. And so one of those very specifically is I love helping designers who are working with architects, or they want to take on projects, let's say for kitchen and bath design, or they're bringing on a whole house and they're not quite sure where to start because Maybe they're not formally trained, or they are at a school, but they haven't worked for a firm. And that's where
Mm-hmm.
I feel so thankful that I have the experience that I have to feel the comfort to be able to say, hey, here's the deliverables that you can provide, and here's the deliverables that will actually be looked at by the contractor, right? And understand what it
Mm.
is and why you're providing those. Um, but I haven't, it's interesting, as I know we were talking about this before too, is one of the big things, and I know that designers in general go through this, it's your title, right? So
Mm-hmm.
what do you call yourself? And again, I'm not licensed, but I have finished all of my hours, which is almost 6,000 hours signed off by a licensed architect. Um,
Wow.
and those were completed in 2018. So that doesn't include any time that I have spent working with interior designers or architects virtually, right? Or taking on my own
Right.
projects. Um, I just haven't sat or passed any of the, I think, 6 licensing exams to become a licensed architect.
Okay.
Well, I have sat for them, but I'm not the best test taker. So you can put me up in a
Mm. It's
crowd and
hard.
I can teach you everything on that exam, but don't ask me to remember it in front of a computer. I don't even know why, but lovely, right? Um,
That's crazy. That's a
yeah,
sin,
yeah.
right? Yeah, that's well. And you know what? Look, we've had a friend in the family who similar experience. Brilliant, brilliant young man, and sat for the law boards more than a few times, and just the test just was the Achilles heel.
Mm.
You know.
Well, it's interesting when it comes to the licensing, because it's so funny. When I graduated from architecture school, I was such a snob. I'd be like, oh, well, they didn't go to school. They don't know what they're talking about. And then the longer you're out and the more people you work with that are very much professional, and the
Mm.
designs are absolutely gorgeous and they know what they're talking about, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe they didn't go through the traditional training. That's when you do have to really think about the process, right? Because these
Mm-hmm.
licensing exams aren't necessarily testing to whether you're a good designer. They're testing to whether or not you know the legalities and the life safety side of things and whether you can enforce them.
Mm.
Truth be told, I think there's a lot of designers, you remember the material for your exam, but you're still pulling out most of those books. You're still pulling
Right.
out um, residential code books and all those sorts of things as you're working on the projects to clarify them, especially because they're updating them regularly, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, but I'm not a
So you were talking about getting locked up into titles, and
right.
I guess where
So
you were going to say is getting beyond that, right?
right, getting beyond that. And I my very first internship out of school was actually for Martha Stewart. It was in the summer of 2009. And I was hired as an architectural intern. I worked under the project
Mm.
manager as they were expanding their offices in the Starrett Lehigh building in Manhattan. And I actually designed an area with 36 offices that they ended up building, that the architect hadn't
Hmm.
actually come up with that specific arrangement before. But every week on Thursdays, a different executive would bring the interns in. And here's the interesting thing, and I think that anybody who's listening to this who's having that, right? Oh, well, I'm a lawyer. Do I really do this? Like, well, I went to this school. Do I really, do I deviate from this? Because here's the expectations. I would say probably about 85% of every executive who talked to us said that if you had told them that they were going to be the art director or the editorial director of Martha Stewart 15, 20 years prior, they would have laughed at you. Most of them
Mm.
never went to school for that. That was not their background.
Mm.
It's just life brought them there and they just
Mm-hmm.
went with it. I think one of them was
Mm-hmm.
at the time, and granted, this was 13 years ago now, which blows my mind. Um, but like, ugh, right? And I think she was one of the editorial directors, and I don't think it was just the Martha Stewart magazine. I think it was other parts of, I think the Meredith. I think Meredith is a Martha Stewart brand.
Yes, yes, right,
And
right. Yep.
I remember her saying that she actually got her undergrad in something completely unrelated, and she had started work but was completely lost. So she enlisted, she just happened to pass a recruiting office, walked in and enlisted in the Air Force, and
Well.
was in the Air Force and then retired, and somehow I can't remember the full story, but she is now working at Martha Stewart as an editorial director, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And it's amazing how these stories, though, have helped me for the last 13 years. Because every time
mm,
I get to that point where it's like, I need to get licensed. And I've had plenty of licensed architects, and they're known within our industry, right? They're
mm-hmm.
who I've worked with, and they've said, you need to get licensed. You actually know what you're talking about. You need to get licensed. And it comes down to, am I not doing it because I'm scared of failing? Or B, am I doing it because it's more of an ego move, because that's an expectation, right?
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
for me, that's probably going to be an internal battle that I have for a long time, either until I get licensed or until I finally say it's
Get
over,
over it.
right? It's not going to happen, but I'm still paying for my
Right.
NCARB stuff because I'm not ready to completely pull the plug on that yet. Um,
Mm,
but right now,
mm-hmm,
every state I've worked in, on my own, what I love is residential, and I haven't needed to be licensed to do residential design.
mm-hmm,
Um, I do
mm-hmm,
get, if a family member in New York or something wants help, that's a whole other ballgame. Um, but for the most part, it's, am I doing this for me, or am I doing it because somebody else thinks I should? And I
mm-hmm,
think that
mm-hmm,
is something that I love mentoring other designers and people who are becoming virtual design assistants or virtual assistants about as well, right? Sometimes it's not the title that they use, but what are my expectations for the expected rate that I charge? Um,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
what are the deliverables that people are expecting from me? All these sorts of things I think overlap within it. So it doesn't always have to be title and licensure related. It's, what is your comfort level standing on your own 2 feet and being really proud of the pedestal you have built, whether it's, made through your education or it's made through your experiences, or both.
mm-hmm. Well, I mean, look, it's such a personal thing. It's, and look, I'm going to pop psychologist here with you, but I got to believe with the body of experience and education you have that if it really mattered to you, you'd sit and pass the darn test. But it doesn't. And until it really matters to you, so what? Like, you know what I'm saying? And look, if you were my kid, I would say to you, I don't think you need to think about it anymore. Put it
Well,
on a
so
shelf.
that's
You
the
know what
funny
I'm
part,
saying?
is my parents have stopped saying it. And the interesting
Yeah.
thing is that when I was in school, so again, I went to Savannah College of Art and Design. So they do have a very technical side to their architecture program, but it is an art and design school, which was one of the things that drew me to it. And
Mm.
I'll be completely honest, almost the entire time I was there, it was basically until I hit my master's thesis, I was like, I really like drawing and I really like doing the presentation work. And I would have these visions of, I don't know if you remember, I think the movie was called Click, and it was a comedy. The guy went through like Bed
Mm.
Bath and Beyond, and he was an architect, but he got to work at home, right? Um,
Okay.
but he was working at home and he was doing drawings. And in my mind, I was like, if I can work at home and have a family and be present and have more control over it, even if it's just drawing pretty pictures and I'm not doing a ton of design work. And the ironic thing is that's what I'm
That's
doing
exactly what you're
now.
doing.
And
That's exactly what you're doing.
and
Exactly.
it's
Yeah.
so I think that helps me too, right? I spent 4 out of 5 years of my education saying I'm 100% happy if I don't get licensed, and here's why. And it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't until,
Mm-hmm.
again, my thesis, I designed tornado resistant housing based off of future implications of climate change. And it won the uh, I don't know, the green certificate or whatever from
Oh.
but I had actually, because of that, started a process to go into the Navy, and I was offered a commission into the Seabees and everything like that. And I'm sure if I did that, I wouldn't be married to a West Point graduate, that's for sure. Um, I used to joke with him though when we were married, and he would grumble, and I was like, "Look, you can always get out of the Army. I've been told my commission is a lot easier to be offered again up until I'm 35, so you can always be a Navy husband if you want." That was like he'd usually stop grumbling at that point. Um,
Exactly, right? Oh my goodness.
um,
Well, I mean, I just feel like that, look, in my mind, there is no conversation, and I know that you know this too, but there's no conversation of, well, why did I do all of those 6,000 hours in architecture school if I'm not going to sit for the exams? Why did I do this? Why? Because you have put every bit of that knowledge to work. And unless you were, like I said, if you were my kid, and unless on the daily you were saying, but I can't do this because I don't have the license, I can't do this, then I'd be like, then stop talking, except I'd say it more bluntly than that. And I'd be like, then sit down and take the darn test. But you're living the dream. You're doing exactly what you want to do. And, the piece of paper for passing the test is not going to impact where your career has ended up. And so maybe like the colleague that at Martha Stewart, who, got a degree in, I don't know, biology and ends up as an editorial director. Now, at some level, their degree is put to use. Any education
right.
is put to use. Any education also teaches you to think. Okay. That's part of education, is teaching you to think, not just think about the product that you're learning, right? The subject that you're learning. But the fact is that you are actually using every bit of your education in the field that you are doing. And we know that we don't have to use the education that we've gotten and be in the same field, but you actually are. And you're not pining away to do something else. And so the only last and final thing, if you were my kid, is I would say to you, if it would give you personal satisfaction to hold the licenses, regardless whether you need them to run your business or not, or to work with your clients or not. If that would give you personal satisfaction, then you should do it as well. You should do it. But it doesn't sound like that's either. Neither is that a driving need. So, look, and the thing is, I know you feel like you're old, but you're young as heck. You know what? You can wake up in 10 years and decide to sit for the exams. You know what I'm saying?
That's my
Like,
thought
I
process.
started this podcast at 53. You know what I mean?
That's where
Like,
that's how I think about it. It's like, okay, well, if I'm paying a minimal amount each year to keep my record active, to keep my options open,
yeah,
I'm going to do it. But
yeah.
right now, to me, I'm doing it out of a linear expectation of a career, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I know that I'm sure there's plenty of architects and licensed interior designers who are listening to this and being like, just do it. It's not that bad. But at the same time, I've also learned to pace myself. Again, I think it's that kind of tortoise idea. And
Mm.
that I've also built this business. Ironically, I think a lot of women build businesses so they can spend more time with their family. And then because we're all people pleasers, if we don't have amazing business coach or colleagues who are telling us, you can say no,
Right.
we will say yes to
Right.
everything and get worn out. And the original reason that we started the business, which was AKA our family, is is the part that's losing out and we're not enjoying.
100%. That's where we have to, be our own advocate. We have to be the protector of our ourselves and our family. And, for someone like yourself that has experienced postpartum depression, I don't know if it has morphed for you, Kelly, into continuing out of postpartum and to still experience anxiety or depression. I know for my daughter, it sort sort of opened the floodgates, and it's still with her.
Mm.
Her youngest is 2.5 years old, and she still experiences it. And so, you have to protect yourself. You have to know your limits, and to your point, to be self-employed so that you can be a mom and also be the professional, but then just run around like a lunatic and not get the good parts of it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And so I think it's awesome. I think my opinion is you're thinking with your head on straight. As I mean, like you need my blessing on it. But I'm just saying, I do think that you are. Look, you're just like you said. This period of time, this period, and you're using your gifts. So now what you're doing is in the two other companies that you have, Virtual Design Mentor, and also Liaison Interior Design. You're using those superpowers of yours, of your architectural background, and really helping other interior designers increase their knowledge and their expertise. And that's a tremendously valuable thing, right? So tell us a little bit about that, how Virtual Design Mentor works, and what are some of the services that you are offering your
I would love
colleagues.
to. So Virtual Design Mentor, as I mentioned before, that actually came from my postpartum experience. I actually don't know if I mentioned it since we started recording. But
Hmm.
there's a therapy, I wouldn't even call it, I'm not even quite sure. It's like a therapy co-working moms group here in the Detroit area. It's called Honey for Moms. And during my postpartum depression and quarantine and everything else that was beautiful and not so much about 2020, um,
Hmm.
they were in many cases my savings grace, right? And the way that they built it up is they had multi-platform. So I was able to network and have a moms group that, while we met in person for the first 2 or 3 months, it turned all virtual, but I'm still connected to them. So with that, when I built Virtual Design Mentor, I built networking groups that are virtual so that other designers, rendering artists, virtual design assistants can all connect and learn from each other. Because to me, one of the best things I've had, especially since working with Nancy, is I'm part of her professional groups that meet on a weekly basis. And
Mm.
since doing that, I having one-on-ones with Nancy is amazing, but also there's something that you learn from other people and their experiences, and you learn that you're not alone. Um,
Hmm.
and I think that's huge, especially for interior designers. Whether you're a male or a female, I tend to I tend to attract many cases more often than not women, and I'm not afraid to use colors that attract women. But I've also worked with contractors and architects. One of the groups or classes that we have going on right now in Virtual Design Mentor is construction drawings and graphic standards. And we actually have a 25-year-old veteran who is a contractor. And he's actually been
Mm.
great to have in the group because, I'll spout my knowledge to the 15 to 18 other designers, depending on which group I'm teaching at the time. And um, if he's the group that he's in, I then have the ability to say, okay, based off somebody who has been reading documents like this for 25 years, what is your experience? And I think that's huge, right? I'm not afraid
Mm.
to ask other people for their opinion and their help. And
Hmm.
I lead this networking group of virtual design assistants and rendering artists, and a lot of the mentors that I have that are offering services and mentoring on Virtual Design Mentor, they all join in, and it's a bi-weekly group. And what I've loved since the founding of it is as people join it, they're uncomfortable, maybe, right? So a lot of the people who work
Mm.
virtually tend to be more introverted. They're more of, hey, I don't need to be the face of a company. I'd rather my work be it, and if you see me, great, but I prefer to not be the seen entity of the design, right?
Mm.
And so there's a comfort level, or a non-comfort level, I guess is the better way to do it, a discomfort of being behind a camera. And being part of a network group that kind of makes it a little bit more casual has made it so many of these mentors who were initially kind of uncomfortable with the idea of recording a course, or um, teaching one-on-one, or even doing Facebook Lives, they're biting at the bit now to how to do these opportunities, because they've
Right.
become comfortable with it. And that was one of my big goals with Virtual Design Mentor, is to kind of break these taboos and these discomforts with yourself that is so psychological. And that's where I
Mm.
think mentoring, I say my work with Nancy is very much of kind of that pay it forward, right? In
Mm.
that she has taught me so much and built my confidence up enough that now when I work with a designer, or when I'm working with somebody who's starting up their business, specifically virtual, um, I'm able to use not only what Nancy has taught me, but what I've learned over the last 10 to 15 years through school and my own experiences, with a level of comfort that I remember the first time I ever got on a Facebook Live with Nancy. Oh my gosh, I remember shaking. My voice was shaking. I didn't actually have like a still camera, so I was using my camera phone, so it was like moving everywhere.
Oh.
Um, versus now, I'm just kind of I'm more comfortable with it, and I think
Mm. You're in your skin.
yeah, but it's you got to build
Yeah,
the
you're in your
skin.
skin. That's right. Well, you got to grow into
Right.
it. I mean, all of us do. This is the truth. And it comes with, years of experience and seeking out, learning and courses and mentors and coaches and all the things. I mean, you're talking my love language. I'm a constant learner, always have a coach, usually have two or three. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think it's
Because
also
everybody has a different superpower.
Well, I think the other thing too is the ironic thing is as we talked offline, was I was like I felt like I had to have the perfect reason, which is so against everything I've learned with Nancy and learned as a
Right.
business owner, right? Is how to disillusion yourself from the idea of perfectionism, and
Mm-hmm.
how you are going to make mistakes, but you are going to learn from them, and you can just teach other people them. And some will take it in and soak it up and try not to do it, and some of them
Mm-hmm.
are like, no, I'd rather jump off that cliff and see if I make it myself, thanks. um
Yeah. I mean, look, perfection is
mhm,
unattainable. Like, literally, it is unattainable. Like, so seeking it is literally a waste of
mhm,
time. I mean, right? I mean, and to your point, a mistake is only a mistake if you don't learn from it, right? A mistake is a lesson. It's an opportunity to grow. It's an opportunity to improve. It's an opportunity for another layer of knowledge or experience or understanding. It's only when we make mistakes and we blow by them that
right,
they are, you know, detrimental to us, because you're going to repeat it. That's the actual truth of it. When you have a mistake, you make it, and you don't learn from it, you will make it
right,
again, because how can you not make it again? You haven't learned the lesson from it. It's just, to me, it's a very logical thought process that perfection is unattainable, so it's not my goal.
exactly.
Right? It's just not. And, mistakes are going to happen. And how many times do I want to make it? One or 15? Now, by the way, I do make some mistakes more than a couple of times, because you get hard
Hmm.
headed and you think, oh, no, that wasn't my fault. And, blah, blah, blah. And then usually the second or third time, I'm like, oh, okay, universe, I'm paying attention now. Thank
There's
you
hard-headed and
for
there's
knocking me over the head. So the thing is, Kelly, now at this point in your career, not only do you have this body of work, but you're putting this of work in service of your colleagues. I was looking at the virtual design mentor business that you have, and you have tons of online courses on chief architect, home designer, SketchUp, Enscape. You have a body here of professionals that are teaching courses under your umbrella. And then also you have one-on-one coaching available and group coaching. So there's online coaching that designers can purchase and download. Then you've got one-on-one training with yourself and yourself and the option for the various other coaches that you have on your site, or just one-on-one is with you?
No, one-on-one is with various other coaches. So for
Awesome.
example, and again, this comes back to that feeling of like a therapy office, right? Because
Mm.
the way I see it, and I know, I'm sure Luann, since you've mentioned you've had various business coaches over your lifetime of your career, each one has a different strength,
Yes.
right? So
Right.
you're going to reach out to somebody because you're going to click with them for
Mm-hmm.
something very specific. So in my mind, if I were to turn around and say, well, I'm the chief architect person and doesn't matter who I bring on, they're not taking over or they're not doing it, then someone might not click with me.
Right.
And so right now I have Sonia Capasso as an alternate training option, and she is more of an interior design background. She does amazing renderings. We have a course for her that she's built that teaches designers how to use SketchUp to build their own custom furnishings. And so she's really good at that overlap. So a lot of times when I have a designer who's trying to decide, do I want to work in SketchUp or do I want to work in Chief Architect? She's gone through that, right? So
Mm-hmm.
she's worked in AutoCAD and SketchUp and Chief Architect. And so many times I'll say, hey, Sonia's the great person to talk to, because really and honestly, I only know SketchUp to be able to open a model, explode it, and delete things. Other than that, you don't want me touching your stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I am extremely honest in that and what my strengths and weaknesses are. I'm not afraid to say it. I have sent designers and contractors and people who've wanted to train with me to people outside of my company. And that's just because that person has a strength in something that I have not tailored my use of the software in,
Right.
right? And
Right.
I want them to get the full breadth of what they need in their education. Um,
Well,
so
that's
then we
best
have,
practices.
we,
Look, if somebody needs something that you're not delivering, best practice is to refer them out. You know what I'm saying? There's no question. It reflects best on you and all around. So, but within this process and this platform, you do have these various designers that have these different disciplines and superpowers, and they are offering all different topics. So you've got Jackie working with you, Kathy, Roe working with you. You've got who else? Heather is here. And so they are teaching those various disciplines that I mentioned. And then the other company is Liaise for Interior Design. And this
yes.
company is where you are connecting interior designers with virtual assistants in the different disciplines. So the one company, Virtual Design Mentor, is to go to for education, to take
Right.
either a one-on-one course, a group course, or download an online course. But then
Right. And
Liaise.
it's not even just that. We actually, in Virtual Design Mentor, we also have a shop, right? So the
Oh.
idea is this is that kind of like one-stop shop sort of
Mm-hmm.
thing
Mm-hmm.
to build up your virtual usage in the sense. So whatever software you're using, whatever your processes. So we had actually started a shop where it includes Chief Architect user catalogs. So either Sonia or Jody Best have gone ahead and built some really beautiful models,
Mm.
and I've formatted them to Chief Architect so that they interact in Chief Architect specifically. It's not using a raw model and bringing it in, hoping it works correctly. It's fully formatted by myself. And then we have SketchUp models that Sonia has built that we're selling catalogs for. And then I also have templates. So when I'm saying templates, if you are a chief architect or a home designer user, I'm now looking for somebody that is a SketchUp layout master, basically.
Mm.
But the template, what these are if you work in chief architect, let's say, and you want to have formal construction drawings and you want to do something outside of chief architect's typical title block sheet and their typical graphic standards, and you really like how my graphics look, I formatted that. You can buy those templates on the
Okay.
website.
Okay.
They formatted and ready to go. Um, so it's again, it's and many times, and I started doing that because I would have people purchase a one-on-one with me, and rather than turning around and saying, hey, let's spend our 90 minutes building a title block. How about you
Mm.
purchase the title block and I'll show you how to use it? So,
Right, right, right. Makes more sense. It's a better
yeah,
use of their time. I love it.
exactly.
So that's all at virtualdesignmentor.com.
Yes.
Okay. And then we have Liaise Interior Design. Give us the rundown on that.
Yes. So that was, so obviously since founding Virtual Design Mentor and then having my previous company, I've built some level of a rapport for any designer who's worked with me or knows my background and my specialty, where I'm now on a very, very regular basis over the last year and a half been getting emails requesting for referrals.
Mm.
So they are designers who have either trained with me or have been referred to me, or they're part of my Facebook group, and they are just like, hey, the industry is so saturated. I'm really kind of exhausted from having to post something on Facebook and getting 50 people responding when all I need is somebody to help me with my email marketing. Or
Mm.
I need a really good rendering artist that has good practices. Who can you recommend? And so there are different places that have directories, but this is built with the understanding that it's only interior design and it's only people who are providing services to interior designers. So this isn't a, hey, I'm an interior designer and maybe I'll pick up work for you, or, like Fiverr or any of these other locations. This is purely, hey, I am a bookkeeper and I specialize in House Pro and understanding how this transfers into QuickBooks, because as I mentioned a while ago, I was an Ivy user, and that trying to get Ivy information to transfer to QuickBooks was like a whole other ball game, right?
Don't get me started.
Um, so, but that also introduced me to my bookkeeper, right? And
Mm-hmm.
realized that there is a niche. There is a difference between somebody who knows how an interior design business and purchasing and purchase orders and all those coordinations work versus somebody that you might get who's, I just say the word generic, but maybe a generic CPA, right?
Right. No, it's the
Um,
truth.
th-
Bookkeeping for interior design is, I mean, honestly, it is one of the most complicated systems ever. I mean, I know even Vinny sometimes, he's always a part of the Power Talk Friday, and the guy is brilliant, and he knows bookkeeping, he knows accounting, all the things. And there's, it took him a while, to have conversation after conversation with interior designer to understand that it isn't your garden variety business model.
right. But
So,
I feel like that's with a lot of the service options, right? So even hiring a virtual design assistant, I remember when I started with the Liaise also was, I got so much work. Ivy, when Ivy existed, I think it's pretty much um, powering down now, but they had a directory on there, and I got so much work from there because it was just Ivy designers knew where to go. If you were listed on it, they had, I'm sure they weren't fully vetted, but semi-vetted list. They weren't huge. Um, but but it was a huge difference for my business being on
mm-hmm,
that list. I think I
mm-hmm,
paid maybe $90 a month and I would have that paid back significantly.
mm-hmm,
So again, it's that understanding of investment level. Um, but just the difference between the quality of who you hire is super, super important, right?
mm-hmm.
So even there's so many virtual design assistants out there right now and virtual assistants who work with interior designers. The difference though is what is the quality of the end product that they're providing to you. And I think there's reasons why there's certain VDAs that tend to scale up a little faster, not just because they provide a good product, but they're willing to learn, and they're willing to kind of mold themselves to make sure that what they are providing grows and evolves as the industry and their clients evolve, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so when we were putting liaise together and Jackie helped me do that, right? She definitely helped me found this. Um, our goal was to have a list of vetted, and we have people that are listed in the background who we've emailed and said, "Hey, your profile is not complete.
Mm.
We need to know your background a little bit more. If you don't have a website, we need some other way for people to be able to see what you provide. This isn't Liaise is not a, hey, I'm going to just sign up for it and my account is immediately going to be listed.
Mm-hmm.
We're actually going through it, and I'm using my experience and my education to make sure that these are quality listings.
Mm-hmm.
And then we do have a goal. To now, as I mentioned to you before, I we decided to hold off for the summer, but in the fall or next winter, we're going to be providing a matchmaking service as long as Liaise continues to grow in its list, so that designers who are, let's say, hey, great, I see that you have this amazing list, but in all honesty, who do you recommend that is great at this sort of software, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
I still
Mm-hmm.
get that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so that we can send them a list, a very, very short list, and they can make those contacts. But then they're not having to vet 50
Nice.
or 60 designers.
Nice.
So, mhm.
I love it. I love it. So on Liaise, an interior designer can get virtual assistance with design consulting, drafting, two-dimensional concept boards, all the way to My Doma Studio, to Squarespace, all the way to graphic design, to bookkeeping, operations, public relations. I mean, there's got to be, 24 categories here that
Right,
you are assembling the experts who these are their specialties, and then a designer can come and learn about the expert, and then have an interview process or whatever, and possibly hire these experts that you've assembled. It's basically
right.
that sort of a thing, right, Kelly?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So we're still building that list. But because it's interior design focused, you're not also having to look through a list, reach out and see if this is somebody who's comfortable
Right, who knows the
learning a
design
software.
language, right? Like it's
Right. You
the
can
bookkeeper
search.
has done bookkeeping for other design firms, right?
Right, exactly. And the beauty of how we have Lee's set up is once you've gone ahead and registered, so everyone has to at least put their email in so that we can verify that you're actually a designer too. When I was putting this together, and I was running this off of Nancy and a few other people, they were like, why do people have to put their emails in? I said, well, first of all, I don't want anybody who's paying to be listed on here to get an insane amount of spam. And I want to make sure and be able to track the interior designers and the interaction, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, but the way that we have Lee set up is there is a search, and it is set up with categories. So if you want somebody very specifically who knows Dubsado, you can search Dubsado, and anybody who has listed Dubsado as a specialty or something that they are willing, able, and to focus on to help that's going to pop up. Same thing with any other type of software. If you want somebody who is a rendering artist who specializes in hand drawings, that's an available category. Um, and I think that's also a really important thing. So you're able to just jump to the people that you think that you actually need and you want.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what Jackie and I have found within the interviews that we have worked with is sometimes we'll jump on and the designer thinks they need one thing when in fact they need somebody else.
100%. Right?
So, right, and and some of that is almost like a mentoring and a mini coaching call in the sense of, okay, so what are your goals again? Um,
Right.
and that's why in the future it will be a paid for service. But right now, we're working on building that list and building the interactions between the designers.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, Kelly, I have to say, it's been fun and interesting to learn about your background and your journey and all the things. And to think that here you do this 6,000 hours of architectural education and all of the places around the country that you've worked. And, it's always so interesting to see what each of us creates with the body of experience and knowledge we have. And here you are with these three businesses and, not only working and directly helping and serving your own consumer clients, but also now providing such valuable resource and education for your designer colleagues. It's pretty cool. And I've enjoyed getting to know you and getting to know about your different businesses. Thanks so much for being here today.
Oh my Well, thanks for having me, Luann. This is clearly something I've been building up my confidence to be able to do for a while. And I'm glad I pulled the trigger because it's like, okay, it's that
It
kind
wasn't
of
that hard, was it, Cal? Come on.
no, and I knew I would enjoy it. I knew it. I would see like every colleague that I know who I'm like, oh, you should be on her podcast, and they would sign up, and I'm like, well, they did it. So that's a lesson to anybody
That's
who
right.
is listening.
Yes.
Reach out. Don't intimidate yourself.
No,
Like
I'm just a regular
Luann's
person.
you.
We're just me and you having a conversation with 10,000 other people. Don't worry about it.
Exactly, right?
Oh
Well,
my goodness.
thank
No,
you
but
for
it's so
having me. I
true.
really
We're
appreciate
we're it's we're all in this together and it's all about helping each other. And I'm glad that you finally did it. And if you are out there listening and you are feeling intimidated, don't just reach out. You got to do the submission form. I can't stand it when you don't come through the front door, but do the submission form and we're all good.
It's real, but it's intimidation about anything.
Yeah.
If you're listening to it and you're trying to decide whether to get into the industry and you don't know where to start,
Good point.
you
Yep.
can set up a discovery call with me. I
That's
don't
it.
mind.
That's it.
Or anybody else. I think that's what Luann and anybody who's passionate about this industry or helping people kind of make some level of dreams reality. The first thing is to kind of get over your own insecurities and your own hurdles. And sometimes that, if not anything, is the hardest part of
Right.
of
Right.
life in general.
100%. It's the stories we tell each other between our ears that really, if we're telling great stories, good. But if we're not telling good stories, that is the biggest hurdle to get beyond. But then after that, I mean, look, you need to do it however you do it. You do it through listening to podcasts or working with coaches or reading or taking courses, whatever you got to do. But just don't, the negative stories, don't believe them. You made them up. I mean, that's the truth. You made them up.
And if somebody told them to you, that's their insecurities, not yours.
Yes. I mean, you don't have to adopt somebody else's thoughts, for crying out loud. If they love pizza and you don't, you wouldn't start eating pizza every day, for crying out loud. Right? Oh, my goodness.
Right.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I do appreciate it, Kelly. It was great talking with you.
Thank you.
It was fascinating to hear about Kelly's journey and how she ended up where she ended up, right? I don't think she would have believed you if you told her back when she was doing her 6,000 hours of training as an architect that she would be running virtual businesses, helping fellow interior designers. But her story is empowering, isn't it? Kelly has taken her strengths and her abilities and created her own business, carved out her own niche, and established a career helping you, her interior design colleagues. And of course, I want to give a huge shout out again to Nancy Ganzekaufer and her role as Kelly's coach. It's clear that Nancy has helped her make those tough business decisions that have impacted the career path that Kelly is on now, especially when it came to raising her rates and determining her niche. And if you haven't heard Nancy before, she was just on the show last week. So please look in your podcast queue for that episode if Nancy is new to you. Now, there was a little nuance in there that Kelly mentioned about her work with Nancy. She said that Nancy told her not to try to become a boutique firm because, quote, that's not what your background is telling you to do. Okay, so we've talked a lot on the show about those Eric Award transferable skills, about tapping into your experience, and about incorporating your background into what you do. Nancy knows that this is a strength also, right? She knows to guide people in this area. It's when you do tap into those things that you didn't realize that are talents, it makes things better, right? Sometimes we might not even realize what our skill set is until we hear that outside perspective of a business coach or a mentor. But so often, the niche that you're trying to figure out is there already in what you've done before and what you are good at and in what you love to do. And that's what Nancy helped Kelly figure out. It's why I always recommend working with a business coach or a mentor, or taking courses, or finding some avenue for professional development. No matter where you are in your career, you always have something else to learn, something that you can improve. And so often it is that outside look that helps you determine what it is, right? We're so close to ourselves and our business. It's hard to see the gaps and where we're falling short, right? Sometimes it just takes a Nancy or a Michelle Williams or a Toby Fairley or an Amber De La Garza or a Rachel Bozick to say, hey, you really need to raise your rates here. Or why are you trying to force this thing when you have a strength right here in your back pocket? It's very powerful when someone holds a mirror up to you and lets you and guides you in seeing what you've been missing all along. I highly recommend it. It is amazing experience, okay? What I love about Kelly's businesses is that while they're separate and distinctly different, she's intentionally thought about what aligns to her mission and vision. As she said, and it's something that I've emphasized in my books and on the podcast, right? That you have to stay in alignment. Unless you're doing a full pivot, which of course always has its place. You are entitled to do what you want to do, especially if your heart is calling you to do it. But don't let yourself get distracted. Stay to the activities that complement and add to your mission, vision, and goals if you are not doing a full about-face pivot, right? Kelly pointed out that the dollar signs can be distracting. When you start making money, you get all of these ideas. I absolutely know what that feels like, right? I want to start multiple podcasts and put out digital projects and products and put in more courses in Lou University, right? But I have to make sure that every facet that I add to my business is in alignment with what I am choosing to do as the business, right? And it aligns with what I do best. This is key. And then when that happens, it's an expansion and not a distraction, right? So you can only sometimes, you got to look in the mirror and own that if you're really walking down a rabbit hole of distraction as opposed to expansion, right? And speaking of what's important to you, there's one more nuance I want to emphasize. One thing that Kelly said that we don't want to lose sight of. She pointed out that so often we as entrepreneurs start a business because we want freedom. We want to work on our own terms. Many of us want to spend more time with our families or create our own schedule. But then we get in the trenches and we lose our way. We start to say yes to everything, even things that don't feel right. And then we get bogged down to the point where our business isn't giving us the freedom that we wanted from it to begin with, right? You have to be deliberate about not letting that happen. Your business isn't always going to be easy, but it should feel good. It should fulfill you. It should challenge you, but make you excited. And if it doesn't, it's worth taking a look at what's not aligning with what you want. All right? Think about, what is your vision? What is your mission? What are your values? Why did you start a business in the first place? All right? A well-designed business isn't just about numbers and profitability. It's about your business helping you live the life that you desire. It's a vehicle to it, right? And of course, I want your business to be a joyful part of that life, okay? It's about deciding on your personal goals, personal and professional, and going after them. And if you're having trouble with your goals, with your alignment. Take a page from Kelly's book and seek mentorship. Visit Virtual Design Mentor or hire a business coach, or look into any of the opportunities that we offer you here through my platform, Power Talk Friday Tour, Luann University, any of the many experts that we've had on the show, like Nancy Gans-Kalfer and others. Okay? Work on defining your business for yourself, deciding what matters and letting go of what doesn't. All right? Give it a thought. Thank you so much for listening today. I just love doing this with you. I tell you that all the time because it's darn true. Thank you. Decide to be excellent. Thank you so much for joining me again today. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks, your resource for custom window treatments and awnings. To learn how we can help you on your next interior design project, go to www.windowworks-nj.com. And if you're interested in working with me on your business, either through masterminds or one-on-one coaching, or you want to know how to get my book, The Making of a Well-Designed Business, or you just want to know what's going on in the podcast land and where I'm going to be, all of that is found at luannigara.com. Thank you so much. Have an excellent day.